Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right to podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. Before we begin today's episode, we want to give a content warning. This conversation includes discussion of childhood sexual abuse, addiction, suicidal thoughts, and recovery. These topics may be difficult or activating for some listeners. Please take care of yourself while listening. Step away if you need to, and know that support is available. You can visit ihavetherightto.org/resources for a list of support services and hotlines. Today, Chessy and I are so honored to be joined by someone whose story is both heartbreaking and deeply hopeful, Trish Kendall.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Chessy.
Hello. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Trish is an international keynote speaker, enduring success expert, personal and team development coach, and a loving wife and mother of two. But the path she walked to get here is one of incredible resilience.
As a child, Trish endured years of sexual abuse and neglect at the hands of her father. By the age of 20, she was addicted to crystal meth, homeless, and moments away from ending her life. But she didn't give up. She made 5 life-altering choices that helped her climb from despair to what she calls enduring success. A success defined not by titles or wealth, but by trust, love, and belonging.
In her TED Talk and in everything she shares, Trish shows us that healing isn't linear, but it is possible. And today we'll hear more about how Trish did just that, how she resurrected love in her life, how she's using her voice to empower others, and how her journey brought her to the I Have the Right to community. We're so grateful she's here. Let's get started.
Trish, we're so honored to have you with us. For those who are just getting to know you, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself in your own words?
Yes. First off, I appreciate how you both introduced me, because what matters the most to me is that I am a loving mother of 2 children. My daughter's 15 and my son's 13. I'm a devoted partner and wife to my husband, Joe. I'm a trusted and trusting member of my community in Canton, Massachusetts. And I am grateful that because of my professional career, I get to inspire people everywhere to do exactly what you just said, is embrace boundless love.
That's beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and just, what kind of work you've gotten into, where that started, what was sort of the inspiration behind it?
Yeah. So for me, when I was 20, to your point, when I was 20 years old, I was a moment away from ending my life from a intentional crystal meth overdose. And at that point, I was completely hopeless. I'm not alone in that. I couldn't see past the darkness and the hopelessness and the loss of love that I was living in. And that's not even just because of what happened to me, but it's also because of the choices that I made after what happened. And so when I was 20, and what saved me was a phone call from my sister, my big sister, Maria. I always give a shout out to her. She's still my best friend. We talk 5 times a day. She's amazing. She's my hero. And at that point, the only thing I thought of was, I don't want to die. I want to live. I'm 52 now. That is a long journey from this 20-year-old girl who just wanted to live to this 52-year-old, I always say normal woman. I'm like, is normal? I'm so boring. I mean, really, my life is so boring. And it is extraordinary because of the ordinary that I have in my life. And that journey took a long time. It took help from others. It took making critical choices. It took taking a step back and moving forward. And I think mostly it took that I had an innate desire to love and be loved. I just had to learn how to do it.
Trish, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story with not only, the audiences that you bring through your work, but also with our audience here today. I feel like anybody and everybody, despite whatever life experiences they've gone through, can relate to that feeling of despair and not being able to see beyond the darkness that envelops you due to whatever level of trauma you are experiencing. And one of the things that changed my life about your TED Talk is the way that you talk about success. You gave an incredibly powerful TED Talk called The Secret to Creating Enduring Success, Embrace Boundless Love. And now for those of our audience members who haven't listened to it yet, would you be able to share what that heart of the message is at the center of your talk and why you felt called to share that story?
The center, the anchor, the foundation of that talk is my unwavering belief that although we each have different stories, right? I'm looking at you, Chessy. I'm looking at you, Katie, everybody, all your guests. We each have our own individual stories. We share a universal truth. And that universal truth is we have an innate boundless capacity to love. And most of us have experienced something in our lives that has caused a barrier in giving and receiving that love. I mean, countless reasons. We all know this. I mean, I don't know a single person who hasn't experienced something that creates this withholding, this withholding of love or the resistance of it. It took me a very long time to embrace that I had the power to give it and to receive it. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it because I'm not, but I am so aware and practiced at knowing when I'm giving or withholding. And I really mean love the verb, the action. Not love the emotion, because we can feel love the emotion and that's not a choice. You could, I could feel love for Katie and still choose to withhold love the verb. Or I could choose to give love to Katie by listening, or by asking a question or by being there for you. And I don't love you yet. So although I do think that creates the emotion of love too. So at the core of my message is that each of us wants enduring success. We all want it. We want success that is full and complete and lasting. We want it for ourselves. We want it for our loved ones. We want it for our teams. The one way that we can create it perfectly is by choosing to give and receive love. And nobody can take that away from us, ever.
And it takes so much courage to do that, right? To be able to give and to receive. I mean, I think, if we could teach people how to give and receive love, I think we would solve a lot of the world's problems.
I know, and it is difficult. So never do I think or believe or try to teach the ease of it. I actually think it's probably one of the hardest things. But when we do, I feel like love begets love. And it's that one thing that, continues. The more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more you get. And the more vulnerable you are, the higher chance that you're going to get hurt. It's just, but it's a process. It's a journey. It's an everyday action with our everyday interactions. But it took me a long time Chessy, to get to the point that was my message. And you had asked, how did I get there? It was really the realization when I became a mother and the experience with Lily, my daughter, and stables and barns. We won't get into that here, but there's a significant experience where I got to choose in a moment, if I was going to continue to live my life happy and fulfilled and content and capped, or if I was going to take a chance at releasing all vulnerability and choosing to give everything that I had. And once I made that choice and I felt and realized and experienced that that's success, like that is, oh my gosh, that is success. Then I was on a mission. To try to inspire, especially younger women and younger leaders to just maybe redefine what we're chasing.
Oh my gosh. The way that you talk about success and the way that you framed it in your TED Talk saying, I am the most successful person I know, or I am the most successful person, that doesn't have to negate somebody else's success, I feel like goes against so many of the messages that we're taught as especially young women in third wave feminism, that, you know, there can only be one woman at the top, that there is a cap on the type of success, the kinds of success that we can achieve. And I notice it more and more now in this, you know, in Gen Z, and I'm a cusper, so I call myself a zillennial. But
wait, what do you call yourself, Chessy?
A zillennial.
That's awesome.
Even though I am solidly in Gen Z. But I think so much of Generation Z is redefining what we call success. And it's not pretty. It's not perfect. But I see so much more of that challenge happening. And so talking about, I just want to further connect that idea of embracing boundless love and how that helps you say, I am the most successful person. Because to me, there's still a little bit of a mental block there. Like, how do you love a world or people who might not love you back, who might not be ready to give you that love back? And how do you keep on trying? Because it takes so much trust and, like you mentioned, risk to share your love with the world and maybe not receive that back.
Yes. And so for me, and I would say if anybody's listening to this, maybe try this on. For me, what has been incredibly empowering is I chunk this macro idea of boundless love down to the very micro moments of interacting with you. And the interaction that I'm having with you right now, what do I need to do to not be distracted? What do I need to do to feel prepared to be here to give you all that I have? What do I need to do to reflect on the conversation later? Because guess what? What you're giving to me is going to help me and better me today and tomorrow. So have I blocked out time for me to receive what you've given? So I take it very tactically in those micro moments of interacting with people because it's controllable and small. What do you think about that?
It makes a lot of sense. I struggle a lot with, big picture issues and putting them into smaller, more tangible, actionable things, especially, in the work that we do. We want to end sexual assault. We want to dismantle rape culture and replace it with a culture of consent. And that's the big looming idea and hope and goal. But you can't just do that. So I guess it's, a great reminder that everything takes micro steps, including a career, including a life, including friendships. You can't just become best friends. You've got to build trust and love and support through steps forward and steps back. So yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And I feel like that is something that we need to be reminded of constantly. And through the stories that you share about how you got to there and how you got to that moment in your life, I think are so important because, I loved when I was little, and I feel like I'm doing ads now for Chicken Soup for the children's soul, the teenage soul. I loved reading stories about people's lives and kind of practicing how I would respond to those stories in my own life to make sure that I'd be the most prepared friend or sister or, person in the world. And so I do want to thank you from, the deepest part of my heart for sharing your story and for being vulnerable like that, because I know it's not easy. I know, or at least for myself, it's hard to go back and revisit those toughest, darkest moments of your life. And at the same time, it's helping so many. So thank you so much.
So something popped in my mind, Chessy, when you said that. What I struggle with in sharing my story. And so first, I'm going to back up just for a moment with this because I want to put this into context. Yes, I get to share my story and inspire others through the gracious gift like you with Aspire, and I have the right to. And I get to share my story for nonprofit fundraisers and children's advocacy centers. Like that's like right in my sweet spot. And because I've had a enduring, traditionally professional career and corporate career, most of my inspirational speaking and workshops are the corporate audience. And I say that because I include my TEDx talk in those experiences, which, as you can imagine, can be uncomfortable, but there's reasons for that and all that. But what I find where I am the most uncomfortable, and that takes courage, and sometimes I hold this back, is the complexity that I loved my dad and he loved me. And how can you understand that? Because for anybody who has not experienced incest or sexual abuse in that way, I was looking because I listened to your episode 18 with, is it Joe Lauren? Yes, wonderful. And I was like, oh, yeah, what you're saying, yes. The complexity around it is embarrassing and shameful more than the act of the abuse. Is the fact that he did show me love in ordinary ways. And I did love my dad as an ordinary little girl would. So that complexity there is where I find I lack courage to embrace to audiences and to everyone that love existed, even in the eye of the betrayal and pain and devastation. Man, how do you get through that? I did, through all the things that we said, but I still work through that. I still work through it.
Thank you for sharing that, Trish. I know that has to be incredibly difficult to talk about. I had two questions that came up whenever you were chatting, and they're different, but I'm just going to say them now, and then you can either pick to answer one or both. But one is just in the corporate space, like what the response is that you get, because it's interesting. I feel like because I do this work, people ask me what I do for a living, and this was when I was practicing law and in the work that I do now. And a lot of times I tell them, and then they ask me more details, and I say, especially whenever I was practicing full-time, I would say I represent survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And a lot of times I would kind of just be met with quiet and they would change the subject. But also a lot of times people would disclose to me. I've had a lot of people disclose to me, whether it's a taxi driver or somebody, that I had an appointment with, whether it was like an eye doctor or a friend or a cousin. Like I've had so many people disclose, and then it makes you realize how common the experience is. Not that it's common to be sexually abused as a child, but to experience some level of abuse that they relate. And so my first question was, just sort of that reaction in the corporate space and what that journey has been like, because, the corporate space is so buttoned up. Like you're not supposed to come to work with any kind of like baggage, but when we force people to do that, they lose touch in a lot of ways. I feel like they lose touch with their humanity, which then breeds so many issues in the corporate space. Whereas if we let people actually be connected, and be their true selves, like how much more effective they could even be at their job, but also just like how much more meaningful life could be and interactions could be. So I'll ask that one, and then I'll ask the second one.
Well, Katie, what you were saying is like what I am living in right now, because I believe it wholeheartedly. My professional experience allowed me to experience a move from I to we. And I was lucky that in my career, I worked for companies and mentors and leaders and cultures that embodied a we versus an I, meaning we're in this together. We care for each other. We give each other the benefit of the doubt. We trust each other. So maybe it's my age, maybe it's where I landed, maybe I was just lucky, I don't know, but I had it. And so it breaks my heart to know that the younger generation, or even not even the younger generation, that it's missing. I just posted something about one of my work BFFs, and my work bestie, and how I miss all that time with her. So yes. Now, corporate audiences, how do they respond to my story? First, I would say that the entrance into my story is that we all want enduring success. So the anchor message is around creating enduring success, lasting forever, sustainable, legacy, multi-generational, anchoring on that. Those business leaders that hire me to come and speak with and work with their leaders, those leaders are coming from a place where we cannot create enduring success for our organizations if we do not believe that we can create it for ourselves. And success is not EBITDA. Yes, it is later. I mean, yes, corporations have to worry about that, but it's the success of the whole, the person, your life, family, home, community. So those people that ask me and hire me already have that belief. The person who hires me has that belief. So we got to start with that. The audience is mixed, and so then the audience coming in, I think what is most jolting is that they are used to, in a corporate setting, perhaps a celebrity or a military vet, a sports person. And you literally, Chessy, like you're saying, you have me, where I'm like, here I am. Who am I? Like, really, who am I? I'm not a New York Times bestseller. I'm not a billionaire founder of a cool tech company. I'm not those things. And I believe I have created enduring success, the most successful person. So we ground it there. And I'm only giving you this background to say then, because the speech is not about sexual abuse and it's not about drug addiction. But in order for me to transform the audience's belief that they can create it, and I tell them how with love, they need to go through the journey of this girl who had complete loss of it. So the reason I say that is then the reaction is, oh my gosh, I believe, I've redefined success. How did you do it? The individual conversations I have afterwards, either Q&A in the audience or in the hallway, there is never a time where somebody doesn't disclose. There has never been, and 1 in 4 girls are suffer child. 1 in 10 kids, is that the right stat now? 1 in 10 kids will experience or have experienced childhood sexual abuse. So it's everywhere. So people in the audience have experienced it for themselves or their loved ones. So I absolutely have conversations with people where they share with me. And sometimes it's, this gentleman said to me the other day, he said, I've been married for 33 years. Our kids are raised. He said, my wife suffered the same thing you did. How did you learn how to trust your husband, Joe? How did you finally do it? And so those questions are him thinking about the journey he's been on with his wife. So sometimes it's those types of things in private that will come up. Oh my God, I just said a lot of things to answer that question.
No, that was so helpful. And what I kept coming back to was like, how helpful it would be for everybody to just define success in that way, because I feel like we're sort of told like, these are all the things you need to be successful, right? Like even myself, it was like, okay, you need to graduate the top of your class, and then you need to get into a good law school, and then you need to graduate the top of that class, and then you need to, work at a law firm and make partner, and you do all these things. And then at the end of the day, you like hit that benchmark that you thought, okay, then I'm successful. But then they keep moving the benchmark. Like it keeps moving the benchmark. And so you find like, you're like, I'm just chasing after something that maybe I'll never get. But if you just stop and say, no, like I have children that I sit down and I play with, and they know love from me. And I have relationships and friendships in my life that like I show up for and they show up for me, like that's success. Then how we would prevent burnout, right? Because then I would not, you don't find the definition of yourself in your work. Like you still work and you find meaning and purpose, and we all have to make money, unfortunately. So like, that's part of life. But if that's not like the defining, and then if we're seeing that in each other, then like people are there for each other. And, sometimes you show up 100%, sometimes you can only show up 70. But if the people around you are supporting you, how different that would be. It just changing that definition of success. Like I want my kids to know that, like you should try hard and work hard, but like, what your job title isn't necessarily how successful you are in your life. So I think that that's such an important reminder.
Well, so I appreciate the way that you connect those, because it's not like we are saying don't pursue those things, especially like I look at you, Katie, and I'm like, of course you pursued that, your passion and your mission and your drive. So it's not an absence of the pursuit, but it's in the presence of what is the most meaningful in my life. Joy or purpose or love. Mine is love. And so all the other things going on around, if I feel chaotic or out of control or puffed up, at the end of the day, am I anchored on what matters the most? And that's boundless.
And if we make time for what matters the most, that's filling our cup. And so then when we go into the other areas of our lives, then it's like, oh, I have the energy to do amazing at work because I spent the time filling my cup with my family or whatever it is that fills your cup. So the other question that came up was boundaries. So you talked about your father and the love that still existed. And, even when you were thinking about this, like when you were talking about this boundless love, I kept coming back to what about the people that hurt us? Like, what about how can we have boundless love while also have boundaries and protecting our heart? And I'm sure that's like an incredibly hard question to ask, but I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
I do have thoughts on this question, Katie, because it is a hard question, and it is front of mind for a lot of people. And so I'd like to answer it from my perspective, and then my business partner, who's my work BFF, Jenny, she'll be fine that I give her perspective on it. For me, boundaries were and are critical to my ongoing health and success. And so I had boundaries as it related to my dad. I did not see him. He was not a part of my life. He has since passed away. But like the boundaries I had with him were very physical, yet that did not stop me from working on my ability to then give and accept love with friends first, and then Joe second, and then as a mom third. So I didn't feel like I needed to relinquish my boundaries in order to experience that for myself. I needed the boundaries in order to experience it for myself. That would be one. The other thing is, Jenny, I was preparing for a community event that I was so grateful to be doing. And social workers, teachers, parents, and it was all about mental health and substance abuse. And she and I were prepping for it. And she got really choked up, and she has an adult son who she has struggled with, and she has 2 adult daughters. And she said, I don't have any more to give. Like, how can I keep giving? And where we got to is she needed to redefine her boundaries. Continuing to give in a situation that was almost borderline destructive was taking away from her ability to give to her daughters. And it was taking away from her ability to give to herself. So sometimes we might think that we have to continue to love the person that's hurting us, but I don't think that we have to be in a position that we are physically or mentally in the presence of them. If we are, then the choice needs to be, how do I give love to this person in this interaction in a way that is safe and within my boundaries? And sometimes that might be tough love. So, Katie, what do you think? Like, does that help get to your question around boundaries?
Yeah, and I think it's just that it's different for everybody, and I think, we work with so many survivors. And Chessy, I'm interested even in your thought on this, is just, how after so much harm, how you can teach people to love and be vulnerable again, but also to protect their hearts, because sometimes there is love there, but you have to walk away from it. Sometimes there's love there and it can still exist, but there needs to be boundaries. And it looks different. And boundaries are a topic that we talk a lot about with the students that we're in, as they're navigating, their friendships, and as they get older, their romantic relationships, and what's helpful, what's not helpful, what's that green flag, yellow flag, red flag feelings, how do they identify it? And then once you identify it, how do you know what boundaries you need? How do you respect the boundaries of others? And so it's just, something that I think each person has to navigate. And even personally, I feel like it's changed. And Chessy, you and I have talked about this. It's changed as I've gotten older, even work boundaries or friendship boundaries and boundaries within your family. And so how to give and have so much love to give, but also be okay, but I need to protect too, and navigating that.
Yeah, and so much of that I feel like happens because of time as well. I'm in my 20s now, on the wrong side of 25, I like to say, but and it's, your relationships with the people that you have known all of your life, like parents, siblings, close friends, obviously have to change as life, progresses. And I know, Katie and I have talked a lot about how change and boundaries don't have to, can sometimes be painful in the context of, a relationship that used to be, one way and is now another. But, as a survivor who has also gone through, a pretty widespread public media spectacle, I have a lot of mistrust for other people. And after, the betrayal of my community and my friends, my closest friends, I really struggle with trusting other people. And then only recently came to realize how much I mistrust myself. Because, leaving my dorm that night, I was taking a risk. I was making a decision on my own after input from many, many people, either saying go or don't go. I decided to leave my dorm. I did not decide to be raped. That was the decision of the perpetrator. But at the same time, I said, well, if that was the first risk that, I really took on my own without consulting anybody else in that moment, how am I supposed to trust myself taking risks moving forward? And so that's something that I've had to work on a lot. But I would love to hear how, and I know you talk a lot about the 5 choices that you made on your journey towards success. And I don't know if that kind of can tie into the 5 choices that you made and can help you kind of trust in your own choices, if that makes sense. I know that's kind of like you have to make those choices, and those choices are a risk. Would you be able to explain for our audience what those choices are?
Yes. And perhaps the third choice gets to a little bit of where we're going here. The 5 critical choices that I share as I deconstructed my journey, because these choices were not so apparent to me until I started to deconstruct, how did I get from there to here? And 2 of the choices are in the TEDx talk, the first and the 5th. The rest aren't. But the first critical choice I made is to pick up the phone when my sister called me when I was 20 years old. And so that's making a first choice. I didn't realize in that moment the magnitude of making that first choice. I knew that I didn't want to die, and I also knew I wanted to be loved. And my sister was the manifestation of showing me that I still wanted to be loved. So my first choice was to pick up the phone. Now, I have since made other first choices that aren't so profound. Growth, anytime we're going to grow, there are first choices that we make on our path. The second critical choice I made was to commit to a 2-way agreement. When I lived with my sister and her husband, they acted swiftly, and within 48 hours of picking up the phone, I was living with them, and their 2 young children. So living with them was conditional. We entered into a 2-way agreement, a near contractual agreement. And I won't get into what that agreement was, except for that in order to commit to an agreement, you have to actually know that you're in one. And so there is structure and context to agreements. And I feel like you teach that in schools too, when because this is a 2-sided, do we understand each other? Are we being clear? Is the communication, do we understand what we expect? So 2-way agreements. What I found is the power of committing to a 2-way agreement for me transformed what started out as I have to do these things that my sister and David are making me do to I wanted to. And so that was the second critical choice. The third critical choice was to build trust. First in myself. And I think this is where I feel what you're saying, Chessy, about trusting ourselves. I've made terrible choices. And to finally deliberately and purposefully choose to build trust in myself. And I did that by doing the little things great. So this is not the correlation of your story with taking risks or not taking risks. Mine was, can I trust that I will do what I say I'm going to do? Can I trust that I will show up for my job on time? Can I trust that I will stay sober? Can I trust that I will, whatever, fill in the blanks. So the third critical choice is building trust in myself and then with others. The fourth critical choice, and this was many, 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 many years after that, was to create community and friendship. On this journey and these choices that I made, I created success throughout those choices, but it was success that there was still something missing. Each time there was still something missing. And so the fourth critical choice I made, I was 30 years old. I had created great traditional professional success, basically meaning I had a job and health insurance and an apartment that I lived in. I was like the richest person in the world. It's like, you're going to pay me $18,000 a year and give me a Dodge Stratus to drive? Like, I'm a millionaire, But that was success to me at the time, like, oh my gosh. And what I realized though is that I was friendly with everyone and friends with no one. And so I was 30 and I said, I want my people. Like, I want friends, like real friends, real community. And so I went on a journey to make that happen. And I'm still incredibly close. I call them the marathon girls because we ended up barely eking out a marathon together. But it was amazing. And then the fifth critical choice was to embrace boundless love. And embracing boundless love manifested when I walked inside the stable to be with Lily. Those 5 choices for me, and you said it, Chessy, at the beginning, was linear in my journey. I would take a step back and move forward, but it was linear. What I have since realized is that if everyone just started with embracing boundless love, you would automatically make the choices in your lives that allow for growth. You'd automatically commit to two-way agreements. It still might take effort, but you would do the things that build trust. You'd create community and belonging at work. Those things would happen if we're embracing boundless love. I wasn't ready to go there. I had to experience all the other choices and what came from them in order for me to get to the 5th choice. But you guys don't have to. So
what are some of the other examples or any other examples that you could share with our audience? And, we have a lot of high schoolers, middle schoolers, students of all ages, adults, parents, teachers that listen. Are there any other, tangible examples of embracing boundless love that you would be able to share, either from your life or that you've seen in other people? Because I feel like that would be helpful to see, or like I love instructions. I love a rule book.
Yes, tactical.
Yeah,
absolutely. And we get into this in any setting, if it's informal or formal. This is topic of conversation because giving love, the verb, the action, manifests for different people at different times in different ways. One of the things that I hear, I don't care if I'm talking to a family or corporate or it doesn't even matter, is someone will say, Trish, when I really listen to my 14-year-old daughter, or when I really listen to my wife, or I really listen to my colleague, they'll say, that's when I know I'm giving love. I say, well, what does that look like when you're listening? I put my phone away. I do a mental reset. I try to restate back what I heard. I try to not judge and jump to the solution. Like all the things. I think about myself as a mom. My daughter, Lily, who's 15 now, she's like, Mom, I don't actually think you're a good listener. I'm like, no, I am. But she's like, you have the answer. You're already having the answer. You're not listening. And I was like, okay. So another example for me in my life of giving love is resetting. And what I mean by that is when someone feels safe enough, and I'll just use Lily. Lily feels safe enough in our relationship that she can call me out. I have a choice in that moment. And that choice could be to sugarcoat it and be like, okay, yeah, mentally. Or the choice could really be to reset and try to listen from a place of not having the solution. That is a manifestation of giving love, resetting. And then another example is then actually listening. I hear all the time constructive feedback, not mean or but the constructive, candid feedback to help the other person grow and do better. That could be 2 high school kids working on a project together. Wow, that takes, I think, courage and bravery and love to come to a place with your partner, in an academic setting. And be like, this is what really worked for me, but this isn't what worked. What worked for you? And could we can do better next time or whatever? I'm kind of making that structure up, but that is giving and receiving love. Here's an example of not giving love. Oh, it's fine. These 2 academic friend, partner working on a project. One of them feels like she's been let down because the other one didn't give, enough to the project. And then the dialogue and the conversation is, it's okay. Don't worry about it. That's the easy thing. That feels safe. We got all the social dynamics. The harder thing in a loving, kind way is to actually work together on how could we do better next time together? I mean, will you tell me, hold on, I know we need to wrap up, but Chessy and Katie, what are examples of giving love the action in your life? Big or small?
I would say just showing up and really, really showing up. Like what you just said resonated a lot with me. Showing up without necessarily already having like the solution in mind. I think that that's something I've really had to learn as a mom, especially of a son who's getting older, and maybe what you would offer before as a mom is it needs to be different now. He's dealing with his own issues and problems in his own little life, and it's so hard as a parent because you just want to be able to solve it, but sometimes that's not what they need. And to just be able to sit there with them and really listen to try to figure out how you can best be there for them. So I think just really showing up for somebody and time. I think spending time with people where you're not distracted, and that can be so hard in today's world because we are constantly being pulled in 1,000 different directions. And I think also to be able to show up for others, you have to show up for yourself. So just also making time for yourself so that you're not just sort of running on E all the time. So yeah.
All three of those I see an experience in my life and all around me. Chessy, what about you?
I think, yeah, similar to what the both of you have said, and something that I'm discovering, and how to connect and stay connected with people is, spending that time and being intentional about it. I feel like, especially once you leave school, there's no time when you're just with your friends all the time. And then when you leave home, there's no time when you're with your family, just all like because you live at home. So taking that intentional time, because time is so valuable, time is something that is finite. And yeah, I think that's, and coming to that time without judgment or expectation. I'm constantly trying to work on that. Yeah, especially with the people that I give my trust to. I want to also take their trust and do justice to it as well. And yeah, part of that is eschewing any judgment, because I tend to be a very judgy person. So
there you go. And I think the awareness is an example of love, the verb. And then choosing your next action based on that awareness is another example. So boundless love, yes, macro, we each have an innate capacity, boundless capacity to love. Yes. Micro is that manifests in the choices that we make in every interaction we have with one another. And that can be practical and it can be profound, but I think it changes every interaction.
Thank you so much, Trish. So as we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you just what's giving you hope today. It's easy to focus on maybe things that are going wrong, but I think it's really important to keep that, optimistic mindset, and just to hear from our guests, what's giving hope? What are things happening in the world that are giving you hope today?
I think maybe three things come to mind. One, in the world, it might seem like love is not around, but when we really talk to one another, each person does want it. And so I believe that universal truth exists. It is there within each of us. One. Two is when I look at my kids, Lily and Sam, and my hope is very insular within my family view. But I am so hopeful for the lives that they will continue to have, because they have everything that from a love and hope and joy and all that. So I'm so hopeful for them. And then third, at a very mission-oriented level, the work that I do with Enough Abuse, I am hopeful. It's a slow grind, but I am hopeful that legislation will get passed and continue to pass so that we can protect children more, so kids can be kids. And I continue to be astounded at the number of people who give so much to these causes. Specifically for me, it's preventing childhood sexual abuse. Countless hours people give to these causes. And so I'm hopeful that we will make movement there to help protect more children.
That's amazing. And as you know, our organization is called I Have the Right To. So we like to ask our guests at the end of our podcast episodes if you could complete that phrase in a way that's meaningful to you or meaningful that you want to be meaningful to the world.
I have a right to be loved completely, fully, and unconditionally. And I have the right to give it back to you. And I aspire to choose love.
And thank you so much, Trish, for sharing everything that you have with us today and for sharing it with the world. We are so grateful for you sharing your love and light and truth with all of us. Now, before we end the episode, would you be able to share with our listeners where they can follow your work?
Yes, please. TrishKendall.com is the main website. You can also find me at Trish Kendall Speaks for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all the things.
Thank you so much. We'll make sure to add those to the show notes as well. Trish, your story reminds us that healing is not only possible, it's powerful. You showed us that success isn't about perfection, it's about love and trust, and the small choices we make every day to move toward the life we deserve.
If Trish's journey resonated with you, we hope you'll carry her message with you. And remember, no matter where you are in your own journey, your story matters. You are worthy of support, of healing, and of boundless love. And remember, you have the right to.
Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire. Follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Learn more about workshops and programming available for students, educators, parents, and community members at ihavetherightto.org.